I just recently posted a video that wasn't that specific. It was kind of vague, but it was talking about the idea that Jesus was a very loving, caring Buddha, Lao Tzu kind of teacher. Give the shirt off your back, feed the poor, all of that. And that was the way he taught and how he taught. But today what we see, especially in conservative politics, is this movement that has Jesus made out to be like some sort of, an angry warrior that's going to come back and start killing everybody. That's what people think. It's bizarre. And I shouldn't say it like that. There's more to it. And this stuff is difficult to talk about without getting more specific. Sometimes you say something and it's not very complete and people get offended and you think, I didn't quite mean it that way, or there's more to it, or something like that. At any rate, after posting that video, I got a comment from MayBee, who I've talked with a number of times, wonderful conversations, and she made a comment in there that I want to read here and then talk about. And it kind of looks at religions in a larger scope. It talks about Buddhism and how it splits, how things are a little bit different, and how it looks like it, it definitely seems like it evolved from Hinduism. And I want to talk about that in this video. Yeah, let's talk about religions overall. And there's one truth. There's one thing contained in all of them. That's this template I'm looking for. I'm finding it. It's just hard to show it because it's so big. And it takes so much to find it on one's own. My name is Dan Paulson, and welcome to the video. Let's get started. Okay, let's start with reading the comment. To be fair, Buddhism also has a bunch of wacky-sounding denominations. And what she's referring to there is in the other video I posted. I will post a link to it below, but I mentioned in there that Christianity just became loose and spread out and went all over the place, and you can't recognize it. And then, so that's what she's commenting to here, and she's exactly right. To be fair, Buddhism also has a bunch of wacky-sounding denominations. They fight with each other about who's the one. Mahayana named themselves the Great Vehicle, to Hinayana, lesser vehicle, because of the sense of rightness they felt. Personally, I like the basic older school of Buddhism without all the rituals and gods and karma or reincarnation beliefs of Mahayana and others. But those beliefs get into the mainstream thinking anyways. It's still just my choice and opinion anyways. Other people can have theirs. I'm slowly learning to be less bothered by the heavily convicted believers. Hinduism is even older, and I'd imagine it's true for them too, but I know very little about that religion or any others. I think I read somewhere that's why Buddha left Hinduism. Why Buddha left Hinduism himself. Buddha did leave Hinduism. Buddhism did emerge from Hindu beginnings with some modifications, quite a bit. I think also some previous Tibetan Bon religion. Okay. Right off the bat, I am not an expert on any of these. I have grasped something completely different, and I've gone somewhere different. So I'm going to mess up some things. I have talked about Hinduism before, and I've made comments about certain things at certain places. I don't get into it too much because of the depth of it and because we here in the West are not familiar with it. It's going to be harder to see things. I've looked at it a little bit, and I kind of have a scope of what I'm seeing, but I have not dug into it. They also have a lot of terms that belong to their religion that means something specific that I don't know what they mean. So I'm going to be careful about talking about the religion. However, I can grab this book and I can show you that template. Can I teach you what Hinduism is? Nope. But I can show you that template. That's what I'm doing. It's actually quite a bit different than like the Bible. If I'm working with Exodus, I know Exodus fairly well. I know the stories. I know the supernatural part of the story. I know the template and how it's framed. I don't see all the component parts, names, and branching. They're doing things like that that are complex beyond what I can see right now. But I can see that if somebody came at me with the Bible, I can show them and I can understand and I can converse with them. If somebody came at me that was a Hindu, that knew Hinduism and Brahma and all the other kind of terms and things like that, I would be instantly lost. I can't talk with you on those terms. However, I can nevertheless read things that have been converted and see how they are conceptually on the template. And the things that they're doing are going to mean certain things like energy or mind, how the mind works, how it transfers. So it's going to be important. It's just going to be a little bit deeper. And honestly, this stuff is so deep, I'm struggling to get through one thing. Genesis is maybe daunting. Genesis and Exodus, yeah. I need to have it memorized, but I've gotten tired of it. Just, yeah, I'm kind of letting it go. Okay, where am I going with this? Okay, the thing we need to do, I want to talk about something else here, and that's going to a mental place. In this material, what I have discovered, if you think about what my claim is, that all of them are based on the same template, that sounds like a stretch. Years ago, I would have thought, what? Excuse me, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that just sounds crazy. There's a place you have to get to. And it took so many hours of processing, thinking it through, being remote out in the wilderness. I guess I've accidentally spent my 40 years in the desert and still in the process of doing that. But it's trying to understand what is going on, and that there's this part that we get to. But let's spend a little time right now looking at this from our higher self. I'm going to talk us through that. Maybe you are going to go on a retreat, I think, coming up soon to work on some of that stuff. And yeah, this will be fun. Okay, so the higher being is a part of our consciousness where we can see things from a kind of a detached perspective. And what we can do right now is just imagine being out in space, looking at planet Earth off into the distance. Go there now in your mind. Just imagine you're seeing space from way off in the distance. And you can see and you understand time. Look at it from the dinosaurs. Yeah, we know that stuff. Time goes by, impact hits, boom, kills them off. Millions of years go by, things are happening, it's emerging, humans come about. There is a universe in action, and there is something going on. And when humans emerge, we emerge from that right there. Those humans are coming from that process. All life is coming from a natural process, and it's going to function on the framework of that process. It cannot otherwise. When people become physical, they are mentally very incapable of understanding that we are connected with each other in that energy field. We become so conscious, we think we're just these little individual specks of dust bumping into each other out here when we're actually all in a sea of energy together, coexisting. That is what is happening down there as we look at things. Be in your God mode here, the higher being. Look at that. Look at all of the things going on and look at how things happen. Humans come along later, and this is just, let's start getting a little more specific now. What happens is that humans begin to emerge from an animal status. They create the capacity. Somehow something happens. They're emergent somehow as this process goes along. There's this natural progression of things. And soon there's this emergence of life that is now learning how to control the environment, tools, weapons, shelters, crops, agriculture. Suddenly you go from, oh my gosh, I'm starving half the time, from a hunter-forager status to now we have lots, we have community. But it starts small. It actually looks like it was pretty big. Gobekli Tepe and things like that, you look at and go, well, that's a lot of man hours. There must have been a lot of people there doing something. That's the only way to explain it. At any rate, so you can understand that this is emerging down there and that these people start off, they're going from a real animal, I eat you or you eat me status to how do we create a society and function differently now that we don't have to do that? What are we going to do? I suddenly don't have to spend all day walking around looking for something to eat. I'm in a community here where people have got crops going and I make pottery over here and I'm just sitting here all day long. I got time on my hands. We suddenly are no longer busy. Imagine that, a pre-technology time of people that suddenly there's a bunch of you sit. You ever been on a camping trip or someplace like that where you thought, oh my God, how long do we have to sit here? Imagine that is your life, but you don't know any different. That's how life was for them. Imagine you sitting there. Would you just sit there and watch the grass grow? Listen to the wind blow through the rocks, shifting sand around. These stories would become an incredible part of our life. In fact, I think if we consider the amount of time we spend with media and connected and doing things like that today, that if all of that was gone, that we would have spent that time in this material. This material was that big, that important to us. We would have, it's also, it's a long time ago. Most of us don't read and write or have books. If you hear these stories, you want to memorize them. They're up here. If you want to understand something, you don't have to flip through pages and look for things or scan for numbers. You just pull it right up. It's in a 3D space in your head. If this was memorized word of mouth back then, it would be a whole lot different than what we see it as today. All combined in one book, put together, a bunch of numbers in there. We'll spread out the verses, doing all kinds of things that just mess it up, actually. It was not that way. These were verbal stories, and they're meant to be that way. I think that will help us understand them. But we're also hurt. We're emotional. There's a lot of things that are happening. And somewhere in the background, it looks to me like somebody has figured out that what is happening here is that humans are born, and when they're born, they have certain characteristics, and you can't adjust those characteristics. Well, they know that. They're taking slaves and babies and things like that from place to place and realizing, well, this person has still got some qualities from where they came from, or they were born with certain things that we can't adjust. However, they came from their culture to our culture, and as they grow up, they sound and think exactly like we do, even though they didn't come from there to begin with. They realize, oh, yeah, we become products of our life experiences. You could be a person somewhere else and become something different, have a different belief. Somewhere in the background, people were realizing that was not true, that was life experiences that we are framing ourselves to, and then forcing ourselves to continue along a path of those life experiences, and that we had to extract ourselves from it, that it was an emotional and a mental process, and the template came about as a result of that. That is what the template is. Beyond that, it doesn't go in the population. It won't work. Not many people are going to do it. That's a part of the template. Not many people are going to do it. It's going to be a certain people. They're not going to want to. They're going to deny the calling. They're going to have to turn inward. You're going to have to know what to do when you get there. The supernatural aid is not supernatural. It's a component part, though, that lets you know, here's the material. Here's how you use it. Here's the teaching. Here's the training. Here's the guidance necessary. However, at the end of the day, you must do it. No one can do it for you. It's a personal path. That is what is there. But then you go from place to place and you try to, now you have people, you're trying to do a number of things. You want that template to travel because you want people to heal. And that's the core reality, no matter what. That is how the universe works. And we are emergent from it. And when we hold something up here electrically and chemically, it is a real thing because you can recall it, right? It's still there. And that energy being held there is causing life to continue in that manner, and that we have to interact with that to change it. They figure this out. But it entails going back and dealing with thoughts and memories until you're okay with your rapist, killers, people you hate, people that have done things. There's this effort to let go of things from the physical world, to not be continually attached to them. And that is hard. And people are like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So you can't really pass that teaching around. Is it the right thing to do? Damn right. We're a product of our experiences and the way we hold them. You want to change the product you are, you have to change the way. The only thing to do is to change the quality of the way we hold our perceptions. Period. That's it. And then change the environment that we're in as a result as well. If we're changing that much, we're not going to fit where we are anymore. So those are all parts of the teaching to help us become happy humans. And we find that template in all religions. However, we also find people now that need to be guided. They got time on their hands. They need to think things through. They also need they need a quality of life. What are you doing? You were busy all the time. You're watching your back from the lion coming at you. We're talking evolution that far back. You're trying to find something to eat. Sometimes, depending on the season, there's a lot. Then other times it's really famine and you have to, travel long ways, long distances to try and get food. That would have been life that is no longer in place. We now have all kinds of time on our hands. And we need something to do. We're not active anymore. We're not doing certain things. So we develop mental practices that are meant to help ease things. We develop things that are meant to do good for our neighbors because that helps us ease our own pain. We begin to practice lifestyles of worship and doing things like that together that helps a community grow and maintain some sort of peace within that group, a belief. But they're also very tribal, so they're not going to all agree on the same thing. Everybody's going to have their own belief. Hinduism is on that template. Who's it for? The Indians. Judaism, no, the Torah is on that template. Who's it for? The Jews. This originated back in Babylonia, or I'm sure it was prior to that. That's the records that are the most complete, where I can look at it and go, yep, I see it right there. I see it in the Enuma Elish with some variations. It was an older style, but you could see the evolution of that template coming about. And it's a self-healing template. We become component parts of the story. We become Marduk. We become Moses. We become Jason. We become Arjuna. Anytime those stories are, they're built on that same template, but in a different place, in a different culture. And you step back and look at it and go, okay, I need to look at this material differently. I found that by going through it and working my way up until I found the commonality. Now I can start at the commonality and go, okay, this is where it started, and it branched from here. And all of these downstream things are branches that continue to evolve because humanity continues to evolve. I'm not going to pull up stats. I was talking about all the different denominations. It's actually, numbers are worse than what I said. If you went and Googled it, it's like 40-some thousand in the world or something, different Christian denominations. You do find branches everywhere. Because people branch, and the religions are what? Man-made. If God gave you a law, wouldn't there be one damn law from one damn God? Okay, so we can figure out there's something that they all claim we're the right ones. And you realize at some point, yeah, you all have a template. I was recently called a New Ager again by a Christian, and I think this template has been around since before the Babylonian material. Christianity is a New Age carrier for it. The truth is, that's what's New Age. They're packaged in ways to be so, people don't, I just want it to be this. This is right. This is my sanctity. Leave it alone. Yeah, I get that. But they don't leave you alone. So at some point, you just got to say, yeah, you do see what you're carrying here? Templates. I made this point in the other one. Jesus, the Romans knew this. Jesus is the chosen one as the only Son of God, has supernatural powers, travels with specially selected group of people, and instructs to seek the kingdom of heaven within. King Arthur is the only one chosen, is the one who could extract Excalibur, has Merlin for supernatural powers, travels with specially selected knights of the Round Table, and seeks the Holy Grail. It's the same template. One of them is a myth, and one of them is a candy shell here, or carry this one. This one is eternity. One of them suddenly becomes, yeah, we need this one to be real. Leave it alone. Anyway, okay, I went off on a little tangent there. We'll call this a campfire chat. We're just blabbing around the fire. Okay, let me get off of that and come right back to the idea now that we've got these big, huge religions, the Bhagavad Gita. The Babylonian works starts getting pretty big. It's not as cohesive. You can see that there's kind of repeats and chunks in the stories there. A totally different thing. As time went on, these became more cohesive. There's Jewish material that we see in the Bible, but then there's also other Jewish material that was separated out of the Bible. There's a lot of other older Jewish material that is not in the Torah. You would find that in something like the Apocryphal Gospels, where Enoch, Books of Enoch, there's a massive amount of reading in there that at one point in time was Jewish material that functioned under this religious shell that ended up not being the final cut. However, as you read and interpret them, you'll find that they are continuations of monomyth. It's a structure. It's a monomyth network. And it was a little obvious if it's all together, actually. The less you see, the less you can see. And some of that is referenced in the Bible. So this is a much bigger network. When it's really old, it's really huge. Hinduism is really huge. Here, check this out. I got the Mahabharata. Buddhism's bigger than this. There's one template. Why so much material? The template repeats again and again and again in a variety of ways. Building. Think of network television, shows going on, spin-offs happening. That is what happens in the big stories as they get bigger. Yeah, that happens in Greek myth and it happens in Jewish material, despite the fact that in the religion they've tried to separate all the stuff that used to be attached to it. It's still there. You can see it. But as time goes on, what happens is society is building, developing. We're 1,500 years later after Judaism come about. We don't live like that anymore. This religion is not as viable as it used to be. Seriously, this is archaic. So what do? The templates are still there. Jesus supports Judaism. How can he do that? And he makes changes in there. We can see that there's something that's going on that we have to analyze. Jesus' material is built on the template as well. However, the analogous verbiage that carries it on the outside changes to fit for their modern times. So now people go, oh, yeah, I'm going to let that one go and I'm going to carry this one. You're carrying the same thing. They just change the shell. They put it in a different box. That's what the religions are, different carriers. The myths are the same thing, except you know that they're myth. The religions we don't like to go after because we think, we're sacrilegious. Step back to God mode. What's going on? This is how the universe unfolds. This is how waves happen. This is how frequencies mix. We are emergent properties of that, and that what we are holding on to that is fixed is causing our life to continue to flow in the way of how that of the way that feels, of the emotional state of it. Okay, time goes on. People they're a lot busier. There's more to do. There's more people. There's more agriculture. There's more making textiles. There's more things happening. Time has been going by and development is there. So people have less time. Buddhism, in the smallest version, is... yeah, it's taking Hinduism and taking all those big, huge stories and going, we don't need that much. Let's scale it down and change it a little bit. Buddha, if you go through it, is called on the hero's journey. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay. In fact, yeah, let's do that really quick. Buddha, the middle way. Let's get back to your comment here. Buddhism also has a bunch of wacky sounding denominations. Okay, so there are different denominations. All of the religion, yeah, you're absolutely right. Every religion splits. There's differences in the way they believe. Buddha found the middle path. There's a right and there's a left, and that's really weird because I think that means turn inward. You got theists that believe in the supernatural, the atheists that say, no, it's not, but right in the middle, there's a template. Turn into... is that the middle path? Are we the one called? We're leaving our past behind. We're going off into a land of trying to find something different. We're going to spend our time trying to meditate and to find the peace that we need to do. Mara, the temptress, is going to be there. We're going to get tempted in life. That's how Jesus comes about. He didn't go under the Bodhi tree. He went into the desert for 40 days. Comes back in the desert and tempted by... the devil. So here we have stories that people would look at and go, those are not the same story. You have to look at them conceptually and understand that they play out in the psyche, that they're parts of us. Okay, let's do that for a moment. Jason and the Argonauts. If I go look through that movie and I say, all right, this is about Jason, that means that's my consciousness. And every one of these other characters are parts of my psyche. I take this entire myth, start at my consciousness, put it into my imagination, and go on the journey. You know what, though? To be clear, these are sectioned up. They're parts of us. They're aspects of who and what we are, but they're also sliced over time. We're going to see that come up here where we're multiple characters. But when I am Jason going on the journey, that means that's not my consciousness throughout life. That is my consciousness consciousness now as I am ready to go back and begin looking at my life. You're always looking to maintain that hierarchy. The exact same process would be like if I am Abram, I am called in the Bible, Genesis 12, is it? Sarai is my inner being. And at first I am in a land of famine, which means I am in an empty state, which is a good place to be. So I travel to the land of Egypt where there is plenty. I am now experiencing life. I give my inner being over to Pharaoh to marry because I don't know what the fear thing is. I'm not quite certain about that. But in return, I get animals and slaves. So I'm getting some things. I'm accumulating some things along the way by giving my inner being over to life experiences is how that would really interpret. To have it as something literal would be like, whew, really? He did that. Ooh, what a creepy guy and girl and God. Okay, wait a minute. This represents my higher being, my consciousness, my emptiness state at the beginning, my corruption in life as I'm not paying attention, and now I'm off down the road and I'm off on the hero's journey. It's a different analogous way of holding the template. You have to see that. But it has to play out in the psyche in order for you to know that. Along the way, parts are being stripped off. Analogs are holding things. We're leaving an island of old gods that chases us. We're struggling to leave our past. The harpies are repeatedly destroying Phineas's food. We have cyclical pain. Some of the things that make it very easy to analyze, if you put the stories side by side, if you were to look at different parts of them. For example, there's going to be one of the Greek myths where I just talked about the harpies coming and creating havoc. They're a malevolent creature that Zeus doesn't allow them to be killed. What they represent is the bad experiences that you have to trap them. But there's a cyclical pain component held in that story, the nature. Something bad is happening on a repeated basis. Now, if we were to look around, we would go to Genesis and see that in the pain in childbirth. The inner being, the Eve character, the woman character, will give continuous pain in childbirth. That as a part of a punishment from life experiences, the garden experiences. That is telling us that you're going to continue to have this pain of the same nature of whatever the experience is that's going to continue to act out based on something that you're holding in life as an experience. Doesn't mean good or bad. It means something that is hurting you and is causing pain. That's what it means. In Greek myth, you might see not just the harpies, but you would see a boulder being rolled up, and then before it could get up to the top, the punishment, it rolls back down. The punishment is that he must roll it to the top of the hill, but it can never get it there. So there's this difficult task to perform over and over again that never gets resolved. There's another one where the liver is being eaten out and it grows back and eaten out and it grows back. And you see in all of those, they sound different, but you go, you know what? Cyclical pain, cyclical pain, cyclical pain. You line the stories up and go, yeah, up there on the template right there. That's how you begin to see it. Looking at enough of them and understanding that they're holding something that represents something different. That cyclical pain is a part of the reason you go on the hero's journey to begin with. That sits there right before you go off on the hero's journey, is that cyclical pain will be there. That's what hurts us. That's what makes us say, I've had enough. But what we're actually doing as Jason is going to go back and get the kingdom. The kingdom belonged to our father, but was taken over by King Pelias. King Pelias represents our early self before we were in charge of things. And the kingdom is always going to be a component part of the stories. A kingdom, your world, your life, your city, your, whatever. It could be anything that belongs to you that you need to go reconquer for yourself. This represents your life experiences right there. All of them represent your life experience. You need to purge this. You need to clean this. You need to take control back of it, something like that. And by that, I mean that there's a goal in the story. Israelites are going to the promised land, Canaan. There's there's a destination that is somehow a part of the story that is going to be representative of a mental state of being that is a peaceful state of being, held in many different ways. But look for that as a component part as well. You've got a goal, a destination in the story, something you need to accomplish. This emerges in Jesus' work as well, going and getting back your vineyard from the people that you've rented it out to. You want it back and they won't give it to you. That's holding this same story. That's holding the Arjuna story. Nope, I'm the family. I don't want you to have it back. That's Pharaoh saying, I don't want you to leave. No, you can't. All of these are representing this repetitive struggle. But that within that struggle, the goal is to go through that struggle or to leave that struggle behind and go regain what is rightfully yours, which is ultimately your mental sanctity. Yeah, that's it. And what is he doing? He's going to get the golden fleece to do it. The golden fleece is at the end of the world, his world, the beginning of his life. This is representing, we go back to, you've been watching my work on the Bible, day number 7, back to this point where before we begin to attach, we're looking for this place of detachment. You gain your world back once you've defeated the things that prevent you from being there and gone back to the beginning of time and recovered this state of being where you're detached, the golden fleece. Nirvana, the kingdom of heaven within, the Holy Grail. They're all going to fit there. You have a goal. That is what drives you. Okay, very quick. Let's make a big cultural cross-comparison jump here. Golden fleece represents, what did we just say? This represents going and getting something that was, it's on the far side of the earth, is what he's told. He must sail to the far side. Nobody's ever been there before. So he must go get that golden fleece in order to, what this is doing is going through your entire life, wiping out everything along the way until you get back to that point before the world started, before your world experiences began. If we went into Genesis, we would find the same thing with day 7, the Garden of Eden. When the life experiences begin, that is right after day 7. After everything was created, everything was naked, unashamed in the garden, and then after that is when the world went awry. What are we told later, all the way down into Jesus' work, is to enter the kingdom of heaven within, to do so as a child 7 days old. What is that 7? 7 represents the golden fleece. There we have a cross-cultural, I'm pretty certain with that comparison between the cultures and the template, that means that those mean the same thing. Those are analogous for the same thing. Okay, I want to keep making these comparisons, but let's go ahead and get back to the Argonautica. King Pelias doesn't want Jason to live. King Pelias even at one point says, I want to kill Jason, and he's told by Hera, if you kill Jason, you'll kill yourself. Yeah, how does this even work? Yeah, it's all inside of us. King Pelias represents our older self. Jason has to go back and meet with the older self and defeat the older self to get the kingdom back. And that's how that is working. If we go to Exodus and Moses is struggling to leave the past. Pharaoh doesn't want him to go. There's cyclical pain happening, represented in plagues that happen over and over again. But despite that, there's this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I can't get it. I struggle to leave the past. I finally get away. Pharaoh lets me go and then chases after me in the same way that, Jason was chased after. Has to cross the threshold and go into the desert, which are all, they're all monomyth elements right there. The Israelites represent us. There's not a million Israelites. They didn't spend 40 years in the desert. You spend 40 years in the desert consuming on a daily basis only when you need to. You get rid of all the other stuff in life. Just, leave it behind. Live in the desert. Take in only what that's like fastest to the world. Shut off everything except for what you need to exist on a day-to-day basis, right there. What happens later on is these big stories get scaled in smaller. If you took Matthew, the book of Matthew, or Mark, or Luke, any one of those by itself, actually, let me be more accurate than that. If you took the Sermon on the Mount or the Sermon on the Plain by itself, you would have the teaching right there, that short, that compact. Or you can have it in that big old pile of books. Yeah. What does your society need at that time? That's how I see this happening, and that's how I see the transition happening. And the people are using it in the way that they want to. They're morphing it. Here's the problem that I have. In Buddhism, even though there are people that might go astray calling themselves Buddhists, I don't think Buddhism, that the Dalai Lama goes, oh yeah, they're fine. They're Buddhists too. We're all here just worshiping Buddha and waiting for Buddha to return. They're not doing anything like that. This is about turning inward and healing yourself. And when people aren't doing it, they're not doing it. That's known. There is no point in time that the religion tells you to just worship something in order to get salvation. That is pure idol worship. Worship something for salvation. Worship Jesus for salvation. That's idol worship. That's what Paul granted in the development of the church. That's where the church became big and lost quality. People make it what they want. They don't follow Jesus' teachings. They make Jesus follow them, and they don't know what Jesus teaches. I can tell you. All right, where did I cover everything? Let me go back here and look at this again. Let's see, the great vehicle. Yeah, I think that the older school. So I think that we talked about all that, right? Where I think the middle path is actually that idea of turning inward and not being, that there's ways of looking at things. That all of this ceases. There's a point where if the monomyth is working, it ceases to be outward in any way, shape, or form. Everything happening is up here. Even if it sounds like, whoa, how did a world get destroyed? Your world got destroyed. How did Jericho get destroyed? Jericho was your evil structure that got destroyed. These are both the same thing, although they're going to sound different. They're going to fit in this story in the same patterned way. But you look at them as the destruction of something that is evil. That is what they are. It's not about the world or about Jericho. It's about the destruction of something that is evil up here. That is what it always is about. Once you strip off the analogs and realize those are just carrying the story outwardly, but there's an inner meaning to it, that you begin to play out the story in your mind and use it as a pathway for going inward, defeating demons, meeting up with, parts of your old self that you've lost along the way. All of that are kind of nested in the story in, a time where it was important to tell these stories. This was their World Wide Web. Yeah, it was. The militant Christians. Okay, so there's a point where I know for me, I've kind of dropped those. I know the template, and they don't. And there's a point where I think people are accustomed to arguing over supernatural, and nobody can prove anything. It just becomes this back and forth bantering. To me, honestly, arguing with somebody about the validity of the truth or, the historicity of the Bible, the truth of Jesus and all that kind of stuff, the resurrection, without looking at it and interpreting it as a living verse, sort of a nested teaching that has a template in there. I find that akin to arguing with somebody about whether or not the earth is flat. It's like, I'm sorry, I got better things to do. I see what's in there. I don't need to argue about whether or not the supernatural is real or not. I see the template, and that's what I'm going after. They usually go, oh, I don't want to talk to you. Or a few of them say, no, you can't see that. That's not there. It's not what. And that's where the few called is. Not everybody sees this. Not everybody's going to. But it is at all times an inward healing pathway as far as the template goes. But each one of the religions are meant to be ways of carrying the template that also provides a lifestyle that is somehow online with getting some kind of healing done. And they've morphed along the way. Same template. What's happening? Times and people change. The religions change as that happens. You finally get to one where it's like, it's kind of hard to advance this one. You live forever for just worshiping. How do you get better than that? You got everybody captured. The masses are there. Ooh, would you want to go to that heaven? I think about God and I think, what would it take for this right here to be true if these people were right? That would take the kind of a God sitting up going, yes, my minions, worship me. Kill all of them, hate all of them, do all of that, do my bidding for me. Worship me, worship. That's what it would take. That's what kind of God that would be. And you're like, I'm not worshiping that. Hell no. I would not worship a God. I would not. Because to me, any god worth their salt would not want you to worship them. They would say, I want you to live life among people, doing good, without having any fear of me, of retribution. I want to know you can do good on your own, without being told, without being in fear, without having Big Brother up in the imagination sky looking over you. That God would be all right. I'd be okay with that kind of a God, because that kind of a God would meet my standards. The one that says, worship me and kill all of those who you have your anger and judgment and shame against. Yeah. Who wants that God? Well, anyway, that's why the whole Save Jesus video too. Anyway, well, this was kind of a rambling thing. Okay, so the Bhagavad Gita, yeah, do we see that? Do we see how, okay, so Arjuna, yeah, I didn't get to that part. So Arjuna, in the beginning of the story of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is in a chariot with Krishna. The chariot represents myself. Krishna is the higher being. Arjuna is my consciousness. And what do we have to do? I got to get my land back from my previous family. What did Jason have to do? He had to get his kingdom back from his previous uncle. You're going back and getting something that belongs to something else inside of you that you are somehow related with, your previous self. You are going back to look at your previous life and say, man, I'm going to put these things to rest because they're hurting me as I move along. They're hurting the continuation of my life, and I want to emerge from that. So by stopping and finding a way to let them go, I can now rise above it. I can now find a way to live from that higher self without constantly getting pulled down into experiencing the memories that I'm carrying with me that are hurtful. That's what this process is about. Krishna tells him, yeah, you got to do all the work. I can advise you. I cannot kill anybody for you. You must do all of the destruction. Arjuna doesn't want to. He's afraid of it. Krishna's telling him you have to do it. Well, how does this work in the upper mind? The conscious is the one that is of the pain. The higher being can't just step in and say, okay, it's all right. It has to work with the consciousness to go and look at those experiences and work at things. This is Arjuna being advised by Krishna in the chariot where Krishna is driving. And in the end, after surveying it, Arjuna says, I can't do it. I don't want to. There's a call. There's a denial. There's this whole setup on how it works in the mind. It's the same story. It's the same template in a different sounding way. Okay, well, it's a very obscure sounding story, except I want to tell you straight up front, the title of chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita is called The War Within. The War Within. Okay, yeah, I covered it. It does branch all over the place, but that's people. There is a certain teaching in there that should be abided by, and there's people that because of the nature of the hidden and the cryptic nature of it, people get crazy with interpretation. Some religions stay much tighter, some get loose. The only religion in the world that I'm aware of, there may be things, crazy stuff that they do, certain things. Oh, worship, devil and you will. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not about all of that stuff. I think that any viable global religion that exists, out of all of them, there's only one that tells you all you have to do is worship and you will get to heaven. They don't include the requirement for a certain set of values. And we see in that group of Christianity specifically values that are all over the place, and those might exist in other religions, but only in Christianity are they acceptable. They're all meeting the criteria. They are worshiping Jesus. They are doing what it takes, according to the church, to be a Christian. And as we're talking about that, think about, if you were to look at that same group, like the MAGA, the different people that are like carrying crosses and wanting to kill people and things like that are just really, carrying flags, camouflage, and hatred, all of them together in the name of the America that I don't frickin' recognize what they're talking about. Who is their leader? Trump. Who is what? An incredible narcissist. What does he do to help out? What does he do to supply ideas? What does he do to... He's like it's like going to the zoo and watching the monkeys throwing poop at people. That's what it reminds me of. It's like, you this, you that, they this, they that, everybody. There is nothing about me. What can I do? It is absolute, that's gone. That is gone. This is a narcissist. Me, I. I'm the one. Holy crap. That's their view of God. In Buddhism, even if people are doing it wrong, at no point in time is anybody saying anything other than the fact that you need to find your own Buddha nature. You are looking for self-purity. It isn't about anything out in the supernatural or worshiping an entity that it's so radically different. It's difficult to call them both religions. It lets you know that religion is a very big term. There's outward-looking supernatural. There's inward-looking that even if it has supernatural components as a part of the carrier, you strip those analogs off and it's not. You know, on the template, the supernatural aid is not. That's just what Joseph Campbell called it. Really what it is learning how to deal with it, learning how to mentally manage until the healing takes place. That is exactly what it is. Okay, that's it for this. I wanted to respond because it was fun, and I know that sometimes I can see this one has gotten too long. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. But I realize it's a big subject, and it's that one core thing that we kind of come through a belief, a system, and we're trying to weed our way through that. We're going upstream to some place that there's a long way up, I can tell you. And I've gone up a lot of streams, and I just kept getting up. The template is the headwaters of where we're headed. If you start at the template and recognize the template and see the template and then start looking at other things from a broader perspective, you'll see that template beginning to emerge as story components that are holding, in analogous verbiage, conceptual ideas. Repeating pain by having something that happens over again. You know, being specially selected out somehow. God's chosen or somehow separated out at birth or something. These components are going to be there, being told, it's up to you to do it. Well, I don't think I can. The fear. Going through the Red Sea, crossing a river, the river Styx, the river to see Pelias, the river to the bad spot or the clashing rocks going through. There's these thresholds that the story's going to contain. You have to go through something or somehow go across a river or a body of water or something those elements are always there. You know, a glaringly obvious point in this one would be if you were to watch that Hollywood movie of Jason and the Argonauts, the 1963 or something like that. It's a fairly old one. The one with the Harryhausen claymation stuff in there. Before the actual journey begins, there is the crossing of the first threshold where you see Jason cross a river and meet up with Pelias. That's when he first meets up. That represents your conscious turning inward at that point in time and meeting up with your prior self and saying, I'm coming to take over. I'm getting my land back. That didn't happen in the story. Pelias knows it's coming, but Jason doesn't realize this is Pelias yet. That comes about a little bit later. But anyway, that's how the story's held. You see how Jason represents me, my going back to get myself. Pelias represents my old self. The river represents turning inward and stop looking outward, going in and facing myself. That is how the monomyth is going to play out in the psyche and maintain consistency. We have to understand that they're holding something conceptual. The crossing of the threshold is turning into the mind, is the first one. The second one, once you get in your mind, you can look around and go, okay, I can see what's in here. I got a spot over there that's really dark, black. I got the lights out. I got shame and pain and stuff over there. I'm not dealing with that one. I'll look at the rest of the stuff in my mind. Okay, that's threshold number 2. You can tell it's there by getting close to it. I don't like it. Yeah, that's it right there. That's the clashing rocks threshold. That's really getting past the big stuff. The Red Sea, getting into the desert, the place where everything is devoid, all of that. Anyway, okay. I hope that's helpful. And I know you've mentioned before, and I realize this, that a lot of people don't like this. I'm looking for the real answer. I don't care about anything else. I want to know what's real. I'm very excited about the idea that it looks like the universe has just been going on forever, and that the Big Bang that we exist within now is an iteration of something that we are existing within, but that was not the beginning of it, that it's something that's been happening all along. That makes me go, oh, maybe there is possibilities more than what I thought, something bigger. If this is a forever thing, let's go explore that. There's something out there. It's not supernatural. Those are the people that aren't figuring it out. They're carrying it. The template is there. There's other things nested in these stories that are complex, and I'm looking at them going, God, this is 3,500 years ago. I don't know how they live. I need help. Anyway, okay. This is a fun video. I like it. Hope it was fun. And MayBee, thank you. And I hope you enjoy yourself if you're going on that kind of that retreat. Yeah, enjoy. Everyone else, love one another, and I'll see you in the next video. But if you watch that, there's a point where Jason crosses a river, saving and meeting up with Pelias, King Pelias. This represents the point where the river represents turning inward. That's the gate. That's a threshold that might be held in some other teaching, a pathway. Jesus has a narrow gate to pass through. The Jews have curtains between spaces in the temple, that they're all going to represent this divisions kind of a thing happening. Where am I going with this? Sometimes I wander away and I get lost.